thank you very much for agreeing for this interview.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's very nice to meet you and see you and interview you. My first question is about your early years. How did you start it? Because I know that you told that it was a war zone, basically.
Yeah, it was euphemistically called the Troubles. But what it was just a continuation of 300 years of colonization of Ireland, where they came over and took the resources. And of course, that left a bitterness where the original indigenous people were the second-class citizens. So I grew up in that, and I was there right at the peak of the moment when everything changed forever, and it was 1969.
How old were you?
I was 7. So I remember the day. You know, you've got that part of your memory that crystallizes a certain amount in time. And I remember the loyalists coming down the street. It was hands and clubs. It was just primitive. And I remember my father and all the people in the districts almost defending it like it was a village. And they took the buses from the bus station and they blocked the streets with the buses and stopped the loyalists coming in. And they burnt like 5 streets of houses that Catholics were living in. They just burnt them out. So I remember that really clearly. That moment in time was the beginning of it all. And it lasted for 30 years of the Troubles. And so with that came just no job opportunities, nothing at all was happening other than the decline of civilization. So the chances of being an artist were impossible. Really, in our minds, the chances of having a job were almost impossible, any job at all. So it was terrible. It was absolutely awful. But as a kid, you know, we ran through the ruins of those houses and thought it was great fun. You know, kids can survive anything because they don't think ahead. They're just living for the moment. But yeah, it was the worst of times and the best of times. It was horrific and wonderful.
And which was the first moment when you started drawing and decided that it's something for you?
Well, my father was wallpaper in the house. I remember that. I didn't have anything to draw on, and he would cut pieces of the wallpaper, the offcuts, and he would give them to me, and I would draw on the back of them. And I think that was the first time my father actually saw that I was a different kind of child, you know. And so he would thought that was quite funny, you know. He thought that was quite cute, and he would just keep giving me the cut-offs. I suppose it took me out of his hair, you know. He went.
Did he encourage you?
Not really. I think he was just happy that I was not under his feet, you know. And he was happy. I think he was really happy with small children. And then later, when he was, you know, he was a very young man. I'm shocked when I look back and think he was 26 and he already had 4 kids. You know,
Okay.
imagine the pressure of that for a man that young. And all he wants to do is drink and have fun. So I think he was happy with his little kids. And as we got a bit older, we became an irritation. Ronnie, he's a wonderful man today, you know, but I think at that time I wasn't really aware of how much pressure he was under. So I tried to keep away from him because he was, you know, he had quite a temper on him. And I think it was that generation as well. They didn't tolerate children very well. You know, you were told to be quiet. Seen and not heard was the thing he said a lot. You should be seen and not heard. So I think he was happy that I was drawing because I was seen, but I wasn't saying I wasn't being heard. So for that, yeah, I think he encouraged me to draw, but he never.
So he was probably lucky that you didn't end up as a musician.
Yeah, well, that would have been intolerable, especially drums, you know,
Yeah.
boom, 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 boom. But yeah, I don't think he even considered that was anything other than just a kid, just doing kid stuff. He didn't see what was coming next. And today, because I want to, you know, go back to that man that I love, you know, and realize that even though he discouraged me being an artist, he was doing it for my, you know, he believed that was the wrong path. Yeah. It was the path to ruin and starvation. And now today he collects my books and, you know, he's really proud of me. But between the ages of 16 and 20, I really wanted out of there. I wanted to be gone. And he really discouraged the idea of being an artist during those times because he really thought it was the path to ruin. But it all came out good in the end.
At what age have you joined the Navy?
Joined the Navy. Basically, I came out of school and realized just how dire the situation was. there comes a point, a switch, where you go, this is not a land of opportunity. And my father, you know, bless him, said to me, you can come and work with me on the building site. And my heart just shrank to the size of a walnut, because there's no way that was my path. The thought of 40 years of just grey, because he was a plasterer and he plastered walls, 40 years of 8 hours a day and more of grey just was a horror, torture idea to me.
And you wanted colors.
Yeah, I wanted colors, I wanted imagination, I wanted storytelling, and that was not in plastering. And, you know, that was a family tradition. And they loved it, you know, they went and, you know, priced out rooms. They did well. You know, this was a place where there was so little opportunity that they were actually doing, in looking around, they were doing very well. They had their own business. It was a family business. Incredible. So, you know, just to have a car. I remember in our street, there were only 3 cars. And my father's was one of the cars. It was almost a symbol of success.
You are self-taught. You don't have any academic background in your art.
No.
And there are many among the Polish artists who deal with, who create fantasy and science fiction paintings. They are not very they don't like academics dealing with fine arts, and likewise there is some sort of animosity.
Yeah.
Many Polish artists, fantasy artists, complain that there is too much love for abstraction among the academics, for example. How do you think? Do you have the same attitude, and do you think there is this problem with on the larger scale worldwide? Did you have similar experience that your art was underappreciated because it was storytelling, not abstract?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's ongoing. And I think a lot of it's politicized as well. I remember reading a long time ago that it was basically it was an innovation that the Russians didn't have, and the Americans had started it first, and then the Russians went and did contemporary art to compete. But that's what I read, whether it's 100% true or not. And then the galleries realized they could make much more money from contemporary art because you could paint a picture in a day and sell it. And academic art would take, you know, months sometimes, and maybe not sell. So contemporary art is very lucrative, and academic art isn't. And so we get more and more contemporary galleries. It would take forever to crowd a gallery with academic art. And so, yeah, I think part of it's political. It's a way to make money. It's monetized. And academic work can be very dry and dull. There's no doubt about that. So I'm always optimistic. I'm always looking to, rather than say, this is awful and this is the way it should be, I like to actually look at contemporary art and abstract art and say to myself, what can I take from that and put in my work? What is it about that is exciting? Because it is exciting sometimes. Some of it's smoke and mirrors, but some of it's exciting. I mean, there's an artist I follow on Instagram. She's just a young girl, Rachel Hall she's called, and she's doing this amazing abstract art. But she has really put her heart into learning the academic skills. And so when she draws a cloud, you can feel the figurative nature of it. And I do that too. I like to take the idea of the figure and all the nuance and gesture in it and put it into everything, into the jungle background, into whatever's happening in the sky. I take that, and then the art has a unifying element to it, which is gesture. And that comes from abstract art. And so if you only have a focused mind on this is the only way to do it, I think you've actually shoehorned yourself or cut yourself off at the heels to say, I'm not going to look anywhere else but this. And I think if you go that way and come back in, you've got something very fresh.
Okay. I think one might call you Bob Ross of fantasy art, because you are teaching people art, and well, perhaps not in the joy of painting way.
Yeah.
You don't have this kind of show like Bob Ross,
Yeah.
but still you are teaching people how to draw, how to paint. And what would be your most important advice for people?
Well, my advice would be that as you're learning, you should be painting. As you're learning, you should be drawing. You don't do it in stages. You don't just go, I'm going to learn for 6 years. And I have seen the eternal student. I have seen universities with people that have been there 10 years. And they keep going back. And they just like the university life, I think. And I think when you get into that position where you're comfortable learning and terrified of stepping away from that, then you're going to do that forever. So I'm very strong in the belief, and that's where I was lucky. You know, you can always take anything and turn it. I could say I was unlucky I didn't get to go to the art college, which I really wanted to do. But I was also lucky that I had to learn how to learn by myself. And when you do that, you really turn all your gears on and go, this is so important to me that I'm going to put 100% into it. And it wasn't until I was teaching in university that I realized just how hard I worked compared to what a university student would work. Because they already had the comfort of 3 years where they could stroll in and out. Where I was going, every day was precious to me, you know, because I also had a job. I would go to the library on the weekends and just imbibe all the works of the great masters and teach myself how to draw and paint. And it was invigorating. You know, it was amazing, all these discoveries. And when you discover something by yourself, it's really exciting.
And you just drew and learned on your own mistakes, yeah?
That's right. And so I never saw the mistakes as mistakes. I just went, the minute I made anything that didn't work, I went, that's something I haven't learned yet. And I learned it. And it was an exciting thing. So I always thought an error was an excitement. I go, there's something new I haven't learned yet. So I never had that fear of failure, because the failure was just another leaping off point. In fact, I was a bit fearful of when things didn't go wrong, because I was going, am I learning anything here? Okay. You know, this is a bit of a flat line.
That's a great approach. I've heard about one professor who told that he loves to be corrected by his and to speak with people that are more experienced and wiser than him, because he learns something new. And when he's the wisest person in the room, he doesn't learn anything new.
That's very true. That's very true. And I've often thought I was always the youngest person in a studio. And I think that was because I had abilities beyond my age due to the fact that I was learning how to learn and enjoying it. And so I would join a studio as the youngest person because of the portfolio. The portfolio was the passport to everything. Yeah. So I didn't really need, I mean, I'm not saying discount university. It's amazing, you know, the leap forward you can get from a good teacher is invaluable. But I felt I was my own good teacher, and I would go into these studios and learn like crazy because everyone was better than me. And it was an amazing feeling. And they embraced me as well, you know. They went, this guy's really good, you know. And so they really have, that's the great thing about the art community, is they want to help each other. Everybody wants to help each other. It's not like corporate business where everyone's trying to stand on each other. Everyone's lifting each other up. And they become better artists by teaching. I think being a teacher made me a better artist immediately, because having to describe something, you really got to know it. And if you can't describe it simply, then you don't know it well enough. And Einstein said that. And that's when I learned, again, like you said, when what I learned from students is that because they don't know what they don't know, they're fearless. So as far as they know everything, because that's everything they've known. And so they come in with this passion and excitement. And of course, every once in a while it goes wrong and they go, why did that happen? And now it's time to learn. But what happens is when they go in there, when you know a lot of technique, sometimes you don't want to break out of it because it's so successful. And they make me break out of something. Because every once in a while they'll make what would be considered a huge error, and it's incredibly exciting. They'll do a long torso or something. And I'll go, wow, that looks amazing. You know, it looks fantastic, this long torso. And they'll go, oh, the proportions are off. I said, but look how beautiful it is. You know, but everything was in proportion in the portion that was out of proportion. Yeah. You know, the nipple wasn't above the nose. Do you know what I mean? It was all there, but it was stretched out. Yeah. And it looked great. I said, keep that, you know. Whatever you come in here with, keep that, because you've come in here with the passion for what you can do. And now they want to improve that.
And they find their own voice, their own style, yeah.
And sometimes they reduce their voice because they leave behind what they think were errors when it was really what was so incredible about their work. So teaching art's tricky because if you try and tell people this is the way, they might suddenly go, well, that's the only way. and then they're just little Patricks. Everyone's got the same style. So that's what I teach mostly, is I can teach you what was successful for me, but branch off of every single thing.
What did you learn on the miniature convention now?
I learned that passion, and I know it's often just a phrase that's coined without thought, is actually the core of where to leap from. And if you don't have that passion, then really you're not going to learn much. And so the passion that the miniature artists have is really infectious. And it's great to come to a convention. Like I go to art conventions all the time. And you'll get this air of authority. Everyone's good, everyone's, and it's lovely. I love your work, I love your work. But the passion of the very beginning of, this is color, this is nuance, the very beginning of it, I want to learn more. That's what is important, and I feel that very strongly. I feel that this is a new thing. I feel it even within the miniaturists. Is that how they're described? You call yourself a miniaturist if you paint miniatures?
Oh, I'm not a miniature painter.
Yeah.
I'm from the outside of this.
But is that the phrase? Are they known as
think-
miniaturists? So the miniature painters are just fabulous, They come in, they're excited. And it's really great to feel that again. Like I say, you go to a convention and you'll get, it's a quiet love. But when you come into something as new as like that, it's an excited love, It's like full of vim. And I think that's a great start. That's what I've learned. We've got to bring some of that vim back into art again.
You like when the models are posing to you,
Yeah.
you are telling them stories, and every painting of yours is telling some kind of story.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah.
How
Well,
it works?
Yeah, well, I've just come back from California. This has been a strange year for me. I usually, every second year, I go to America for a convention. But when COVID came, that all stopped. And I felt, it's like a clock. I go, I should be traveling now, and I haven't been. So when the opportunity came up to go to California, the New Masters Academy called me over. And that's very prestigious. There's no saying no. I got very used to saying no during COVID. No, I'm not going to go out there and get COVID. And then the New Masters called, and I was, it's different. Of course, yes. And off I went to California. And at the time of my artistic life, directing models that I admired. There was two models I admired, Rajiv and Amanda Akin. And, as an artist, you need the model. The model's half your work. If you get a good model, they're taking half the heavy lifting already. And so when I met them both, I was a bit nervous because I admired them so much. And they were nervous too. So it's like that with art, when you get two artistic forces together, there's a crackle. And when I had Rajiv there, once you see this magnificent model and you go, wow, he looks so serious. Could be a gladiator in Rome, and I was a bit frightened of him. And then he was the loveliest guy in the world. It was just his physical presence was so tough. And when I give him a story, I would give them an emotional story. I'd say, and even just an emotional prompt. Today we're going to work with the emotional prompt, the feeling of revenge, how you feel with revenge. How does that make you feel? You've been betrayed. How is that going to fit into your physicality? And I would play the part. When I was talking to Amanda, she gets betrayed by Perseus. It's just me springboarding off a myth that's already happened. So it's not the myth that we know. But I love that about myths, that you can expand on them. And so in this myth, she's one of the Gorgon trio, and she falls in love with Perseus, and Perseus is falling in love with her until he realizes that underneath this crown she wears, there's a head of snakes. So I said to Amanda, let's play with this idea that she's going to seduce Perseus, and she's going to dance for him. And this has worked so many times before. And in her world, when the snakes are revealed, that's the most exciting, emotional thing that can happen. It's the final act of seduction. And the snakes will come forward and hiss, and he can't resist. How erotic is that? But he doesn't, because he's human. So when that comes off, he's horrified. And he actually takes his sword and cuts a couple of snakes off. And Amanda enlarged on, she says, her sisters. I thought that was amazing, you know. She was so into the story. And I thought, yes, they're sisters. And so that's what we started with. And so Amanda would start to act that part. And I would remind her of the story and enlarge on it while we're talking. I said, okay, he's there. He's coming through your window. You've seen him now. And she starts to crawl across the floor and did her dance. And when she's portrayed, I says, now claw at your flesh. You know, I'm doing all this in the background, and she's doing it in the fore. It's amazing. So I said to Amanda, so claw at your flesh. Feel that betrayal as a physical thing. And this movement with hands, when I have life models, they'll not know what to do with their hands, like a bag of sausages just hanging there. So when you get an emotional prompt working with models, I used to move their hands. I used to say, here's the sketch, and pose them. And it was disastrous. And so now if I want someone to hold a sword, like Rajiv, for instance, so I had Rajiv as the hero. And rather than have him hold the sword like that, I would say, pull the sword and strike. And the fact, you could even see me do it there, the fact that he pulled the sword, it made this hand happen, as well as that hand. And now he's totally balanced, and it looks so authentic. And we were shooting those frames, thousands of photos the whole time. So any one of those was a really beautiful painting. You just got to pick one. And it's the anticipation that's more important than the action itself. We were talking earlier. When the guns come out, I sort of lose interest in the film. It's just all bang, bang, crash, smash, you know. I kind of lose interest. I fall asleep. Like the end of the James Bond movies, it's the most expensive part. They're all coming down in zip wires. I get bored by it. It's like watching your washing go round. But the fight on the train, so intimate, the breathing, you know, the anticipation that this guy that just walked past on the carriage is maybe a spy. That kind of stuff I love. And so I try and set up the anticipation. And then the reaction to the action, the defeat, the falling forward is much more impressive, I think, as an emotional piece of art. So that's what we were working toward, just based on emotional prompts. We end up with a reaction to something, the portrayal, or the anticipation of something, seduction. And you get it all, you know. Hopefully you'll see that. You'll actually see me direct. There's one, I just took one still off, and I'm doing this, and Amanda, the model's like that.
Yeah.
She's so involved in the story. That's just before we even do the shoot. She's so involved in the idea that she's about to do this and springboard off it.
When you told me about these snapshots and the photographs, I thought about this technique of making movies, animation, that you put painted arts on the real actors, like in the case of animated Hobbit movie years ago, and in the Scanner Darkly, based on Philip Dick story. And I thought, have you ever thought about making this kind of movie, or, well, making some sort of animation or comic book telling a larger story, not by single painting, but the series?
Yeah, well, I did do that as a kid. That was my springboard. There was an artist called Steve Ditko, and he drew Spider-Man. And he showed how to draw Spider-Man. But it wasn't the way you draw Spider-Man. I don't know why he did it. He must have been told to do it, because kids would, you know, how's some kid going to understand all of the nuances to draw Spider-Man without something simplified? And so he put a grid. It's the old master's method. They grid it up, and they look through the grid, and they see. They used to have a frame like this, and they would put wire through it. And each one of those little squares, they could see the model through it. And they would grid up their canvas bigger, maybe, but as long as everything was in proportion. You know, the square on this one was that size. And they would just draw what they see through the squares, and then it would all piece together as a complicated piece of academia. And he said, this is how you draw Spider-Man. There's no way he drew Spider-Man like that.
Yeah.
But I thought that's how you draw. And I've copied it, and I went, I can draw Spider-Man. But I couldn't do it without the grid. So yeah, I used to draw comic books as a kid, because I loved Marvel comics, way before they were this massive thing that they are today. I loved their comic books over DC comic books. DC comic books were very academic, if you look at it. You would say there's academia, and you would say there's Hollywood. And I liked the Hollywood version, because it had style to it, where the DC artists were much better artists, really. But they were held back by technique, whereas the likes of Jack Kirby, his technique was amazingly flash. And he would do like 6 pages were the guys at DC would be doing one, and those 6 pages were much more exciting. You break through panels and stuff. So I would draw, with my love of Marvel, I would draw my own little comic books, but I drew cartoons because I wanted to work for Disney. So yes, I used to do that, and I made the whole thing a production. I was really focused on being a superstar. So it would be a Patrick J. Jones production. And then on the inside page, I go, written by, drawn by, inked by Patrick J. Jones all the way through. It'd be this big
In
thing.
one of your earlier interviews, you mentioned that Disney movies were your big inspiration.
Yeah.
Pinocchio, for example. Yeah.
Pinocchio, for sure.
Yeah.
And that was a moment, going back to the Troubles again. So the Belfast was in a ruin. It was ruined. It was absolutely a ghetto. And if you saw my talk where I put up on the screen the streets I grew up, just an awful place. But great, beautiful people, wonderful humor, you know, incredible. You know, it's amazing how you can flatten a city and you can't kill the spirit of the people. In fact, it almost brings it makes the people stronger. So
we know something about it in Warsaw.
Yeah, absolutely. And I identified with that, you know. And when I saw that, what happened to Warsaw, I was going, geez, that's Belfast on a massive scale, right there. And the people, what did they have left? But company themselves, you know. And they drank a lot and they laughed a lot, even within these ruins. And so, yeah. But the thing was that everyone's human. The soldiers that came over from the British Army that came over, they first of all come over to protect the Catholics, my side of the road, from the loyalists who came in and set the houses on fire. So they came to protect us. And then later it became more political and they became the enemy too, because it was the British. The loyalists are the British descendants. And, you know, so that was their side. It was very, very complicated, as everything is. But the British soldiers came, and they were using what you see today, the hearts and minds approach. And they put up a poster that said, "Screening today, Pinocchio," Walt Disney's Pinocchio, in Holy Cross School. So the school at the top of the street hadn't been touched by the Troubles, but it lay dormant because it was on the border of the Loyalists and the Catholics. That's why our district was invaded, because they just needed to walk across the road. And so this was on the border, and it was just basically abandoned. And the British soldiers come in, they put a big white sheet up, and they screened Pinocchio. And to us kids, you know, television was not, there was no Walt Disney movies on television, because it was an IP idea that you only released it in the cinema. And if you didn't go and see it in the cinema, you didn't see it again, for 10 years maybe. But the British Army had access to movies. And I remember going across, we were only kids, like 9 years old, and I'm walking across the street and all the other little 9-year-old kids, and we were being booed by the adults. We're going, boo, traitors, little kids. Nothing was going to stop me. I'm going to see Pinocchio. And so when we went, these little fresh-faced kids, and they started the projector, and even that was magic. You know, the projector?
Yeah.
And then the screen. And I think they give us sweets as well. But I was just mesmerized by that opening scene, that pan scene, which in its day was totally innovative, you know. It go through multi-plane camera, going through the village of Pinocchio. And to this day, it's still my favorite movie. And not only because of nostalgia, I still think it's the masterpiece of Disney. I think it's the best movie they ever made. The storytelling, the characters, the artistry, that group of artists were never bettered again.
Have you seen the actor movie, the actor version of this?
No, I want to, the Guillermo del Toro one?
The one with Tom Hanks now is.
Oh no, I haven't seen that one, no.
There's one version of Tom Hanks as well.
Oh no, I can't imagine that. Please tell me he doesn't play Pinocchio.
He plays Geppetto.
Oh, thank God.
Luckily.
That would be horrific. Because I saw Pineapple Express, I think it was called. That was one of the most awful CGI movies I've ever seen. You know, that had that uncanny valley thing where it was almost real but not. That was terrifying for children.
Yeah. Speaking about uncanny valley and about computer effects, I've been wondering, what is your attitude towards AI art and things like that? Have you tried, for example, using Midjourney and writing the prompt describing the art in style of Patrick Jones?
Yes, I have.
And
I have done exactly
what
that.
was the effect?
It wasn't too bad.
Okay.
It wasn't too bad at all. So I can see what everyone's frightened of. I mean, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. So take, like, if we go back in time and someone said to me, there's no more photo retouching for you. Now that happened. I made quite a lot of money from photo retouching, and then Photoshop came out, and there was no more photo retouching for me. Now, to give people hope, when that happened, I didn't cry. I went, good, I'm tired of photo retouching. I really don't like it at all. And so I'll do it on computer. And so now I'm making more money. Not that money was ever a motivation for me, but when I was doing photo retouching, I was only doing it for money so that I could fund my, art. And so now I can fund my art quicker. So that happened. But this is a different story because I could do logos and all kinds of things to fund my art. And now I've tried it. It's truly incredible what it can do. And I was talking this morning about it. There was an artist, Dave McKean, I think it was, and he had to do an album cover for his friend in a weekend. And that's a lot of time. That's not much time for, traditional art. And he decided to use the AI, and it did it better than he would have done in his style because he put his name at the end of it. And he was shocked and horrified and very unhappy about it because he says, what's the point? This does it better than I can. But I would say, just hold on there. It can only do it better than you can because it's you. It's your name. That's what made that art. It's your style. So it's terrifying that someone can come in and replicate another person's style. And let's say it's a kid at 15. And you give a kid at 15 $100. They'll think it's $1 million. And now, what does an art director care? Let's use this little 15-year-old kid, do his prompts, pay him $100 instead of, this guy,
but
$10,000.
It still has to have some styles to be fed on.
That's right, and that's the problem with it. And so there's a class action case right now, and it's run by a couple of artists that I know, not personally, but know them. The art community's small, and they're taking a class action, and a lawyer that, maybe thinks this is a great celebrity case here. Is doing a pro bono. Because you'd have to, because the money behind the AI is billions. They know already that they can kill any artist dead in court. So they need a class action like that. Because if only they'd come to the artist first and said, here's compensation, everyone would have been happy. They're just harvesting all the art in the world. You can actually put in an artist's name. Now they know that. And I think they can cancel that. They can say no named artist, because they can actually put in no nudity. So they can do it. Let's not pretend they can't. So they know what they're doing, and that's the problem with it. But, I put my name in, and it made a huge difference to the art. So I put in these prompts, and if you look at it, what's terrifying is that just how many people have embraced the idea. Like I went into Midjourney, and anyone can do it. Just get a free account and try it out. And you just see the art like this, bum, 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 bum. And I know it's kids, but the thing is, it looks incredible because, let's say it's a 15-year-old kid, it looks like a 25-year-old person did it. That's the skill level, straight out of the box. And so they no longer need that early generation of artists to do their work for them if they're doing advertising campaigns. So you can just put it in, like you can put a fashion model from the 60s against a groovy background, and you'll have it. No photographer needed, no lighting system, nothing. A $20,000 shoot for free. And, that's enticing for a kid to just do that. But what I noticed is it was all the same. It was like hundreds and hundreds, for strange reason, teddy bears in costume. But hundreds and hundreds of portraits. That seems to be all there was, with terrible hands. Can't do hands.
It still has problem with hands and with writings. But
they're getting there.
Are there any new artists that you find interesting in the subject of style? Some that you could recommend that we should pay attention to?
Well, I have my own students, and they're great. They're coming up. And looking at artists today, I always thought Ashley Wood was a tremendous artist. He lives in Australia. And it's not because he's Australian. I didn't even know that. Just so organic, he paints like he's AI. He looks like he can paint a picture in 20 minutes, and it looks fantastic. It's just the bare bones, dripping paint, and a few highlights come out, and it looks amazing. So I think he's fantastic. I'd say, well, he's not a new artist, but it's always fresh to me.
Could you repeat his name?
Ashley Wood.
Ashley Wood.
Ashley
Okay.
Wood. That's just coming to mind. I mean, there's many, many artists that I think are fabulous. I mean, you know, we all know how much I admire Boris Vallejo
Yeah.
and Frank Frazetta and stuff.
And Julie Bell.
And Julie Bell, of course. And Donato Giancola, all these guys. You know, I know them personally, which is a wonderful thing as well. What art can do, it can take you to that world, and now you're part of that world. But yeah, like I said, I don't want to pick any one out. I mean, Rachel Ann Hall only came to mind because I was looking at her work this morning. So they're there, you know? And I think the good thing about AI is that AI makes them fearless. And so what I think is great about AI is when I was in there in Midjourney, trolling through it and banging one awful piece of artwork out after another, and then started to hone it and understand how it thinks, and put Patrick Jones at the end every time in color scheme, Patrick Jones color scheme, Patrick Jones art, I started to see my style come through. And then I noticed that I have, 20 artworks here, and I could just pick one of them and paint over it, and it would be beautiful. And so I did that. And then I realized I have just cut down the time for me that was really the hardest part. That's why I always charge money for concepts, because that was the toughest part. Once you get to the point of, okay, go ahead from the concepts, breeze. And if someone says, I'm not interested at that stage, you've just wasted all that time and money. So I always charge for it. And it was never that much you could quibble over. And I saw a guy go broke because he didn't do that. So they just mined him for ideas. And that's what AI does. It harvests ideas. And that's the problem, and also the great thing about it.
And when you see like Midjourney imitates your art, then you can start to think how to work outside your box.
That's right. So I think it's still, and that's the optimistic me. The optimistic me says, okay, you've honed these skills now, just like Rembrandt. You no longer have to mix your paint, put in the underpainting, all that, lay down the sketch. Give that to an apprentice. And that's what Rembrandt had. He had a house of apprentices. And then they would pass it to him, and he would paint the final flourishes. And that's a Rembrandt now. But it had many hands in it. But none of it was possible without Rembrandt's ability to teach these students how to get to that stage where he can take it to the end. So he would do the sketch, and then they would block it in, and then he would finish the painting. He'd do the start and the finish. The problem with Midjourney is there's no mid. It's just straight to the end. So there's no journey, really. There's just an end. It's actually an oxymoron. There is no mid-journey. There's no journey. And that's what's terrifying about it. I hope that art doesn't die with it, die with the idea. I mean, I've already heard that there's conventions for prompters.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to insult anybody, but that's incredible.
It's the prompter becomes a new job, new way of being artists.
They're the artist, yeah.
Composing the prompt.
And there's something almost comical about it.
But the thing is that they actually don't have much decisive matter in the final effect.
Yeah.
They give prompt, but they don't decide what Midjourney will be, giving to them.
There's the weakness in it. So the weakness in it, it doesn't understand narrative. It has no idea. So if you go to work in the movies, you can forget about that. I mean, it'll give you a start. That's what I was saying. I had a start here. That's interesting. And what's brilliant about it is it breaks you out of your basically traditional ideas. And I saw ideas in there that I wouldn't have thought of. I went, that's actually something fresh. And now I can grow from that. And so the prompt now is here. It's given me a prompt to go into another place so it's millions of minds coming back. It's like having a lot of artists around you.
At some point I asked ChatGPT.
Yeah.
I tried to interview ChatGPT about some aspects of artificial intelligence and about art, for example. Yeah. And I asked it about what are the qualities that artificial intelligence art has over artists, and what are the qualities that artists have over AI.
All right.
And ChatGPT responded me that AI can think that it is not inhibited by human rails of thinking.
Yeah.
that it thinks outside the box because it's not limited by it.
Yeah.
But humans have a much larger range of emotions.
Yeah, that's what's missing, the emotion. And it is great. I mean, I love it. To be honest, I think it's incredible. And I'm excited by it. I really am. Would I be this excited if I was 20 years old? I'd be terrified. Because at 20 years old, I made a living doing all the things that AI can do right now. And it was a skill. Yeah. It was a skill for me just to airbrush a sky. If like, just thinking the Real World Project, when I first started out, Lockheed would come to me and they would say, here's our plane on the runway, but we don't like that grey sky. Can you put a blue sky? And I would mask out the plane and I'd put a blue sky in. And now, wow, you can change the weather. And that was amazing to them. That was magical. And I could charge a lot of money for that. And compared to the money I was making on the building side, I was the king. You know, that was my week's wage done in a couple of hours. But it wasn't continuous, you know, so you could be starving for weeks and then all of a sudden you're the king of the castle again. But now I can imagine how an artist at 20 is going to make a living. They're going to have to call a side hustle. They're going to have to side hustle. But it's still exciting. It's exciting. And I think you should embrace if they can just compensate the artists, I think the world is righted again. We can right the world back again. But they don't want to do that. So that's the big problem. So morally, I think it's wrong, but what an exciting time for this to come along. To be able to just prompt an art. Plump. I mean, maybe one day you'll just prompt, you'll have an empty canvas there and you'll go, oh, I'd like a Dali there. But in this scene, and it would go plump and just appear on the wall. The thought of that is exciting as hell. So I love innovation. But mixed feelings about it, but still excited.
Yeah, we were talking about the nudity and the difference between European art and approach to the nudity and American way of thinking about it and the correctness of it, the Puritans kind of. And also that you love painting female body because it has, as you described it, sort of rhythm.
Yeah, it has a rhythm to it, yeah.
Could you tell us more about it?
Yeah, well, the puritanical thing in America has always been a dichotomy for me, that it's the land of freedom, and yet there's no freedom for artists. I think that's very strange. It's very odd. And here in Europe, you know, like I was putting the slideshow together the other night, and a whole page of nude models came up because I was working at the booth drawing from the nude models. Not a blink, nothing at all. Just a European acceptance that that's the human body. We all have one. It's a beautiful thing. But if that had happened in America, it would have.
They would lose their minds.
It would have been an incredible shock to the eyes. Not so much at an art convention, of course, but just generally. That was, there is definitely, like I get cancelled on Instagram all the time. Yeah. And yet I've heard that you can have nudity in art on Instagram. Well, tell that to Instagram, because they don't seem to know. Because they cancel me every single time. And I think it's like once you're cancelled, you can just draw a thumb and you're going to get cancelled. It's like they know who you are now. Yeah. So everything I put up, they cancel. If I just put up a woman smiling, they'll cancel it because it looks too erotic, you know? So I don't know what to do with that. So I have an Instagram account that went, 45,000 followers, cancelled, nothing. In fact, it started going down. I didn't think you could do that. So they're starting to take away followers. What is this, like, is it like a prison sentence now? Or are we starting to, is this punishment? Yeah. I had no idea. So I've fallen out of love with Instagram. I hardly post on it anymore. And I used to, you have a chance to actually challenge it. I said, I challenge this. You know, and cancelled again. I challenged this. We've reviewed, you're cancelled. And I went, I'm tired of this. I used to delete all the pictures. They say delete all these pictures, and I would delete them, and then I wouldn't be cancelled anymore. Then I'd put another one up, and you're cancelled. And I thought, yeah, forget about it. I just put up what I want.
Insane censorship.
Yeah, it's censorship. It's the opposite of what we want, you know? I mean, censorship in its place. You know, we can't have all complete freedoms, but in art, what the hell? So, yeah, I thought, you know what, I don't care. I just keep putting stuff up I want. And then I disputed, just only disputed, never took anything done. And then amazingly, okay, What? Did a human suddenly come into the room? I don't know why. It's just the same art that they cancelled last week, so I have no idea what's going on there with Instagram. But yeah, censorship in the art of the human body, to me, is just ridiculous. I think it's the most ridiculous notion. I mean, how do you walk around the Vatican? You know, you may as well put blinkers on. It's ridiculous. So yeah, I'm very passionately against censorship of art. I think it's outrageous.
Can you tell us what is your opinion and what are your reflections and thoughts on Kontrast Festival and our magazine, because you had opportunity to see it?
It's wonderful. You know, I love the days when you walked into a newsagent and there was magazines everywhere. You know, magazines on cinema. I remember Munsterland and all these great magazines. You got a thrill just to see them, let alone pick one off the shelf and buy it. So I love the tradition of magazines. I'm so happy you're doing it, keeping that tradition alive. In fact, I came out of my apartments just this morning and walked by a booth filled with magazines and still selling cigarettes, which I see is quite unusual. But you don't see that anymore. In London, it's newspapers, and there are very few of those as well. Never the magazines anymore. So I love it. I love the idea of books, and books are coming back. You know, bookshops are starting to return. And hopefully the magazine stalls will start to return like they did. Yeah, let's hope so. So I love it. Kontrast, I'm totally in love with it. Warsaw, totally in love with it. And I'm in love with America too, by the way, after saying about the puritanical thing. It's just censorship I'm unhappy with. So I love to travel, but I love Warsaw, that old town, just fabulous.
Hope to see you more often here.
Oh, no, we were walking the other day, and I was saying we could live here, couldn't we? Just the guys from Italy. Just stop and live here and just call your friends over and say, look, we're going to live here from now on. So I love the people of Warsaw, so nice. But especially the people in Kontrast. When I went on stage last night, and I was given an award out to someone, and I got a chance to speak for a second, I was just going to say thank you very much and talk for a full sentence. And said I was made most welcome here. And the cheer from the audience, I was going to cry. My heart was so full, you know. So I thought, does anyone really notice me? I'm this guy walking around. But it was a huge eruption. So yeah, I wasn't aware of just how much love was coming at me. I just saw it at the booth, but to see it en masse like that was incredible. Yeah, I'd love to come back. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope to see you more often here.
Absolutely.